Welcome to this edition of Backstage Pass with Lia Chang. I'm your host, Lia Chang. Today, I'm at the Asian American International Film Festival, where I just saw A Great Divide, and I'm standing here with my dear friend, Jeff Yang, who was the screenwriter and is also the producer for the film. Jeff, congratulations. Oh my God, we're so proud of you.
Thank you so much. It is such a blessing to be here in New York, where I was born, where I'm from, where my family and friends are.
Friends, also great.
Like you. And it is probably the end of our festival circuit. So being here, where it all kind of began for me, with this film is kind of how I wanted to do it. So
now you
so
mentioned that you almost thought it would never happen. What did you mean by that?
Well, this film really began with just a conversation in the backyard of Jean Shim, the director, where she was just saying, "Oh, I would love to make a film, a movie that's sort of set in the context of what we were all experiencing in the wake of, xenophobia and anti-Asian hatred."
Oh my God, it's so visceral.
Oh my God, yeah.
There were so many times when I just tightened up.
There absolutely are moments where the hair on the back of your neck kind of go up, and yet at the same time, when somebody just announces it would be great to make a movie, your first thought is like, sure, like good luck with that. But
well, isn't it just adding another hyphenate to all of your hyphenates?
Well, I guess, yeah. I will say, having been on movie sets and in television productions, I know how hard it is. So the fact that we were able to actually make this happen is kind of a dream. And it only happened because Jean is determined as heck. She twisted my arms to come on board and write and produce. But she also just made it possible by extending her network, getting friends, family involved. It really was a village that
and an
put this
amazing
together.
cast.
An incredible
cast. Can we
cast.
talk about how the cast came together?
Yeah, so when I was actually writing the screenplay, the first person I thought of to play the father was actually Ken Jeong, a good friend of mine, somebody who I knew has really just deep dramatic talents that have never been exposed. So the opportunity to put him in a dramatic role, and one like this, which is so close to who he actually is in a lot of ways, was something that I'd always been thinking. And then Jae-suh Park, who of course is married to a good friend, fantastic actor Randall Park. Jay is great. I mean, she has so many layers. She's such a nuanced actor, and I knew that she could just burn this up if we had the opportunity to have it.
Hi, I have some information for you about our wildlife. I'd like to come inside and show you some of our materials.
Sure, come on in.
This is a bottle trap. Stick your little paw in there, kiddo. Oh, look at that. Now, what happened?
I couldn't get out unless I let go.
That's right. I want you to let that be a life lesson for you, boy.
My name is Benjamin Lee. My family just moved to Wyoming.
Yeehaw! I have a hankering for something special.
Everything on our menu is special.
We'll have the steak sandwiches.
We don't have them anymore.
Aren't they having steak sandwiches?
Those were our last ones.
Since it's my first time visiting, what do people do here in Wyoming?
Bike. There's a lot of moose and bison out here.
I've never seen Mr. Bison. Show me.
Stay away from the animals. Get out, now!
You know, this town really knows how to lay down a not welcome mat. And I honestly don't think I've ever experienced racism.
Hey!
Why don't you just leave the woods to us? You belong here.
Being here with your family kind of made me wonder if it's a problem.
As long as you're here legally, I don't think where you come from should matter. I don't even see color.
Would you like some more wine?
Oh, that's why I'm drinking red.
I thought you said you didn't see color.
Sometimes it feels like our country is at war with itself.
Get these people out of my town. I don't care how you do it.
But I think that someday we won't be standing across a great divide.
We're here now. It was worth it. I would do it all over again because I love you.
All we got to do is smile, persevere, and be strong for the sake of our loved ones.
한국에 고생 끝에 낙이 온다 하는 속담이 있어.
Listen to this. I came to America because I heard the streets were paved with gold. When I got here, they weren't paved at all. I found out I was supposed to pave them.
it's a hard film to watch sometimes, hopefully a fun film to watch sometimes, but it's one where there are so few documents that really look at that period, that almost missing period of our lives, those 2 years.
And that's what great art does.
Yeah,
right?
Thank
Really,
you.
it's affecting. Now, you also have something else really wonderful happening. Your book.
Oh, yeah.
You are just at the AAJA convention and are here for the screening, and then are going back. Can we tell the audience more about your book?
Yeah, so I wrote a book, actually. In fact, I was writing that book while I was on set, tuning the script for A Great Divide.
Multitasking.
Yes, exactly.
So Asian.
It's multiple windows open at the same time. But I was writing a book called The Golden Screen, which is a look at the ways that movies have made us as Asian Americans. Made us in the sense of helped us to kind of learn who we are, but also framed us, and through the perception that they've cast upon us, projected upon us, have kind of become our reality.
Right.
So it's 140 films, essays on each, with people whose lives have been changed in some fashion by those films, giving comments about the impact the films have had on them. And we're in the process right now of actually developing it as a PBS documentary.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah.
You heard that here.
The story continues. Yes.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I know
you,
it's
Lia.
time for you to visit with your family before you get back on that plane. So
Yes.
thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And I didn't know you write the screenplay because you are mostly known as the writer at the Wall Street Journal and all that. Yeah.
Father of Hudson Yang.
Yes, of course. It's been said that the one golden rule about the first-time screenwriter is to start with something you knew. So is this kind of based on what you knew personally, or what led you to start writing screenplay?
Well, the screenplay writing actually kind of snuck up on me. I've known Jean for a long time, the director, and ultimately this was her story initially. She wrote a treatment in which she actually, right as COVID was starting to lift, I mean, we're still living with COVID, but when the first wave was starting to die down, her family actually was one of the first that my family got together with in an outdoors situation. And she had spent most of her career making commercials and a few shorts, but had never done a feature. And based on the experiences that she had personally, both in California and in Wyoming, which is kind of a second home for her, she said she wanted to try to write a story that would kind of take the experiences we shared together as Asian Americans and kind of pull them forward. It was a time, obviously, when all of us felt a little threatened. All of us saw people around us who were being harmed and put at risk. And as a storyteller, she said the only thing that she felt she could really do was to try to tell stories. And initially, she just asked me to give notes on the treatment, but the notes became more notes, and finally said, could you write a draft of the script? And then finally, I found myself a producer, and you wake up in the middle of the night, it's like, what am I doing? But there was so much in the screenplay, in her story, and in the stories that we shared, that felt so close to us still, that it was, it felt like something I couldn't say no to. And especially when I reached out to Jae Park, incredible actress, and also Randall Park's wife, and Ken Jeong, longtime friend, fantastic comic actor who's really making his first dramatic debut here. And they came on board. The story really started to tell itself. And we were just so fortunate to get such a fantastic cast. last but not least, absolutely, MeeWha Alana Lee, who I think is absolutely was inspiring.
So MeeWha, how did you come on board for this film? Audition or?
Like any other production, yeah, it was audition.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not a lifetime actor. It's my 7th year, and A Great Divide is my 5th feature. So I feel really honored. But anyway, what I realized in actor's life is whenever you leave town, there's audition. So I was in my son's house in Iowa, audition came, and so I just prepared in his kitchen and, made a self-tape and etc. And when I asked the casting, can I rewrite some of those dialogues and so forth, because it was, spoken in Korean, and I'm first generation immigrant, so, and then I started asking all kind of questions, where was she born and when was she born, and all that, because Korean is not all the same. There's many dialects. So this grandma speaks a little bit hint of North Korean accent, because she was already 10 when she left North. And then she grew up in Busan a little bit, which is my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went to Seoul for college and etc. So I mixed all that, and I, conjured up the person that I have grown up around, So she speaks not just the standard Korean.
Mm-hmm.
She speaks very mixed, strange Korean actually.
Did you know North Korean accent, or did you?
But I was always a little goofy kid that always, imitate.
Okay.
It's like North Korean will just say, "종간나 새끼." That is you bastard. Kim Jong-un will say it that way. But it was like little things that I was always, there's a largely 8 provincial dialect, and I could mimic most of it. I didn't know it wasn't gonna come in handy. Yeah.
So Jeff, is this your first screenplay you've ever written?
It's the first one that ever came to life on screen, obviously.
Okay.
But I will say this, I mean, it felt like an urgent thing to write about, but once we actually had the cast on board, as MeeWha mentioned, all of our stories actually started to kind of flow into the screenplay. MeeWha and I talked extensively about the grandma and what she was feeling and where she came from as we actually tuned those dialogues. But also, there are 2 really kind of extended monologues in the screenplay and in the movie. One with Jay and one with Ken Jeong.
Yes.
And the Ken one, I wrote for him because I'd always kind of imagined him playing this role, but I actually took an incident that came out of my father's life, and where he actually retired as the acting director of his department at the hospital where he worked, and kind of tuned it for him. And meanwhile, Jay's monologue is kind of inspired by incidents that occurred in her life, sorry. Although she never stole anything. It's just to be clear, statute of limitations has passed. So, but this feeling that we were all kind of collectively telling stories that were in our heads, that we knew that were part of our families or part of our own personal experiences, was very much something that drove the making of this film.
Okay. And you've been acting for past 7 years. What did you do before, and how did you get into acting?
I graduated from Seoul National University, design major.
The Harvard of.
And then I came to University of Iowa and got design studies master's degrees, and started teaching college design. And then I couldn't stand fine artists teaching, pretending designers and teaching design and so forth. So, like a boneheaded Asian woman. So I quit, and then I joined the Fortune 200 company, Kimberly Clark. and then I came to New York as Colgate-Palmolive, and then I worked for Kraft as a brand design strategy director.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like Jeff's father's story also was my story too. You know, like I don't understand what you're saying. You know, that's what, I was deputy of their senior vice president of marketing in a huge global company, right? And these Ivy leaguers sitting there and going, I'm telling them what you should or shouldn't do for brand building. And they'll go, oh, I don't understand what you're saying. And I'm going, is it my English? I'll tell you a different way. If veterinarian, my pronunciation is bad, then I'll say animal doctor. Then you'll understand. But no, your English is very articulate. That leaves you just kind of, then my English is articulate. You don't understand then. You're from Harvard or Yale, and what are you telling me? It's like Benjamin was in. It's exactly same situation. That was, my life, 20 years in corporate America.
I see.
Yeah.
And how did you get into acting?
It's a long story. We had our second son, Alan. My screen name comes from, and he was studying film, and he had a clinical depression, so left us. So I decided, well, kid, you couldn't do it. Your mom's gonna do it. So he was gonna be a cinematographer and cinema music because he was a pianist too. So we lost him when he was 22, and 3 years later, his mama turned into actor. I don't know. He might say, "Oh, gee, mom." And the lullaby, this guy's. I don't know where they picked it, but that's my lullaby, So I always sang that for my kids. I can't sing very well, but some songs I can manage. So they said, "Can you sing this one?" I said, "Yeah."
Wow.
Yeah, I sang many times. Like when you're making film, many times, and then I think editing used very last one because my tears were already dried up by then.
Wow. Well, we have a couple of minutes for audience questions. Do you have any?
I have a question actually of the audience because, like I said, I feel like the character of Grandma is as so incredibly portrayed by MeeWha. Again, the spine of this film. But there are some audiences that kind of get what's going on, fairly early, and others who don't. And I just want to know, how many of you kind of started to realize that maybe Grandma wasn't there? That okay, most of the people here, right?
Why, it looks like a ghost?
Yeah, it's a ghost, something like that. So I'm gonna say this, like when I first showed this to my mom, on TV, we had a final cut and everything. At the end of the movie, Eternal Life, she was crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm amazed that this had such an impact on you. And she's like, oh my gosh, it was such a tragedy. It made me feel so sad. And I was like, yeah, obviously this is something we all lived through together. And then she's like, I can't believe that family kept their grandma in the basement the whole time. Why would they do that? I was like, that's But I get it, it's sort of like we actually, in creating the character in the situation, we wanted to kind of tread lightly a little bit on it. So we had certain rules, like the grandma rules, right? She only could interact with Benj. And she only was visible, or he could only quote unquote see her when he had his glasses on, right?
And we don't touch each other.
You couldn't touch each other. She only pointed to things. She never touched things. But then at one other screening, I remember at the end of it, somebody raised their hand and said, "So at the end, does the grandma become the moose?" Maybe. She's the spirit of nature. So yeah,
it's possible. Right? Yeah.
Sometimes the metaphors kind of become, they take over the film a little bit.
Any questions from you guys? Don't be shy. You can raise your hand. Kayla got a microphone, so okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Up here?
Right here. Unless you can speak up.
Just when you were talking about writing, were you writing as they were also shooting, or just explain that process and then how you interact? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, congrats on the film. I'm Mitra Khalida, old friend of Jeff's. I was just wondering about the writing process because you alluded to, kind of tweaking the dialogue. I just wondered what that was like. Was it while the film was shooting, and then how you interacted with the director?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Mitra, because this was not like any other, I think, feature screenwriting experience that I could have imagined, in that it was actually a lot more like TV in some ways. Since I was on set for the shoot, we actually shot on location in Jackson, Wyoming, and all of us kind of like stayed at the house that I was living in and so forth, the next door neighbors. Since I was on set, whenever we ran into something, or whenever we wanted to change things, Jean would have me like rewrite scenes on the fly, and there were circumstances where she would sort of discover things or come up with ideas, and it's like, why don't we change this? Can you actually write a new scene? We have 30 minutes. Or it was very much on the fly. But in some ways, that's kind of the environment we were in. Like the moose, a lot of people ask about the moose. We did not wrangle a moose. We did not buy a moose. That
I was
moose,
wondering about that.
Yeah, right? That moose actually wanders around that area. And so we had our cinematographer, our hardworking and very kind of super patient cinematographer, Ray Wong, and his amazing parents are here, Lillian, Arlen, hello. He was on moose alert at all times, basically. Because Jean was so determined to have a moose in the movie that she would have neighbors kind of call and say, oh, the moose is coming. And whatever time of day or night it was, she'd be like, gotta get Ray, get the camera. And so finally, the shot we got there, Ray was actually still in bed. It was like 4 or 5 in the morning, really early. And somebody called and said, the moose is there. The moose is coming your direction, and it's gonna head into this backyard of the house you're staying in. So he got his bathrobe on, slippers, ran and got the camera, ran outside, woke up Jean, got her out there too. None of the other actors were awake, so the only thing we could really shoot was the moose. But as soon as he turned on the camera, he realized the battery was blinking. And he's like, oh my God, the moose is sitting there, but it's just sitting there, nothing's happening. I'm just filming a moose, like eating grass, and what are we gonna do with this? Literally, as the battery died, the moose stood up, as you saw on the camera. So that's because the moose is grandma.
And it is independently funded a movie.
Yeah.
So I got there that afternoon. We did a rehearsal until very, very late night. And then next day, we shot all 6 sequences with Benjamin and me. Yeah. I mean, it's throughout the movie, from the beginning to end, whole emotional arc and all different interaction and all that. The next day, I was just totally wiped out. I almost turned into a moose. And I just came back to New York. Yeah. So, yeah. Independent movie making.
That's what it was.
Yeah, speaking of which, so this is on a festival circuit currently?
This is actually probably the last or the second to last festival screening we're gonna be able to do of this, because we are getting distribution, but this is not gonna probably go theatrical. We don't have a theatrical distribution, but we will be going to platforms. It'll be on VOD and rental. And then I think in October it's going to be on Hulu.
Yeah.
But either way, one of the things we will ask you guys is if you guys can follow us on Instagram, A Great Divide on Instagram, and otherwise just like stay in touch, because when this comes out, we're going to really need everybody to just get the word out. as much as possible. But we're just so glad to be here in New York. I started my career actually working at ACB, so I'm an alumni and a member of the extended family. And New York is where I was born and grew up, and MeeWha is here too. So this and LA actually the only two big cities that we really have not been able to get out in. And I think we're gonna get LA actually in a couple months. So right before.
I always add this. You know that, right? Our story, these yellow people, our story has to go out and be shared, and tell stories to each other and help each other. But sometimes, there's a lot of immigrants stories and generational conflicts and etc. And but their script was, and even though 6 scenes they wanted me to come for 3 days, but I wanted to go because it was so balanced. Because a lot of times, second, third generations are so eager to tell story about Asian immigrant, families and etc. But I don't know, for some reason, the immigrant parents or grandparent generation was like portrayed a really awkward other, like a strange people, or it just sometimes really buffoon, like a strange English and stuff, So when I saw their way of telling all the stories, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in it, right? The daughter was really, holding grudge over, a mother and all this, but that's gradually, that is kind of resolved, and each other telling stories. So I really encourage second, third generations for, really look into your family history and understand first. Don't give your immigrant generation, parents or grandparents as like a little laughing point. It's because they speak in English, strangely kind of stuff, If I ever see that kind of stuff, I just walk out. I can't stand it. But there's a difference. So you should continuously write more stories.
Well, please tell friends and family about the great divide, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Yang and MeeWha Alana Lee. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.
Thank you for joining me for this edition of Backstage Pass with Lia Chang. Until next time.